Welcome, welcome, welcome. Here we are again. Last week we were talking about love, God's command to us. This week we're going to be in the book of Ephesians. We're going to be in chapter 5. We're going to look at verses 1 and 2 of chapter 5 of Ephesians. And as you can see, I've got the Bible open. I've got Ephesians 5, 1 and 2. I'm ready to go. If you're not ready to go, you get that Bible out for yourself. And that way, when we start, you're reading it for yourself. Again, we're going to be in Ephesians 5, verses 1 and 2. Here we go. So imitate God. Follow him like adored children. And live in love as the Anointed One loved you so much that he gave himself as a fragrant sacrifice, pleasing God. And that's where we're going to be at, is in these two verses right here in Ephesians 5. Let's take a look. Paul begins here, verse 1. So, imitate God. We know what imitate means. You try to sound like, you try to act like, try to do the mannerisms, that sort of thing. You're trying to be like God. So imitate God. Sounds very simple, doesn't it? When I explain it that way, it just means, you're going to copy. But here's the thing with this. You can't hear about God and then say, I know how to imitate God now because I watched a TV show once and they talked about God, so now I know what to do. If it's secondhand knowledge, third-hand knowledge, you're not going to be able to imitate God. Paul says here, so imitate God. That means that you've actually been with him, because to imitate, you got to have some first-hand knowledge so that you know, okay, this is this person here. I want to imitate them. I want to act. I want to talk. I want to be like them. So I set that in my mind here, and I imitate over here. Without that personal, intimate contact with this person, in this case, we're talking about God, you can't imitate. There's no substitute for that. You have to actually know God. And that may sound real simple. But then Paul goes on. Follow him like adored children. Which gets back to what I was saying. There's no way to imitate God without actually knowing him. There's no way to really know him without being around him. Follow him like adored children, Paul says. You know how if you have children yourself, if you've got grandkids, maybe you are a teacher, a Sunday school teacher even, or a public school teacher, private school teacher, you understand. Follow God like adored children. We're getting back to, Paul tells us to imitate God. Can't do it unless we know him. Can't know him unless we actually spend time with him. That's why so imitate God. Follow him like adored children, because they just kind of flow right into each other. Because we can't do this unless we're doing that. And so Paul, imitate God. Follow him like adored children. Because one doesn't go without the other. And then Paul goes on in verse 2. And live in love. And let me just stop right there. Live in love. How am I supposed to know how to do that? We've talked about we're going to imitate God because we're going to follow him like adored children. We're going to actually know God, going to spend time with him. And live in love. And Paul describes that for us as the anointed one, as Christ loved you, because Christ means anointed one. So we're not changing the words around. You're like, oh, mine says Christ. Why does this say anointed one? Because they're the same thing. Christos in Greek means anointed one. The anointed one. Live in love as Christ loved you. So much. And then this is how we're going to live in love, because we're going to remember how God loves us. So much that he gave himself as a fragrant sacrifice, pleasing God. Jesus gave himself as a sacrifice. That's this servanthood that we need to imitate in God. Because God came as a servant, came as a baby to grow up in the midst of us. Why? Because we're dull. We are dull. So a lot of people think they're really smart. We're not. God knew, unless I'm right there with them as a human being, walking alongside them, they're not going to be able to get this. And even when I am there, it's still going to be tough. And so Paul reminds us here of the commands of Jesus. Remember, Jesus talks about loving your neighbor as yourself. And then he goes into John 13, 34 and 35. This new command I give you. Love one another. It's love. That's how people are going to know that you're my disciple. Now here's Paul. This is not Jesus. This is Paul talking, saying, okay, we know what Jesus said. So now, what's for us? What do we do? Imitate God. Follow him like adored children. Live in love as the anointed one loved you so much that he gave himself as a fragrant sacrifice, pleasing God. So we come back to this, imitate God. It's spending time with God. And so it isn't something I can cram for. Okay, now I've got the answers for the test. There is no way to know, to effectively imitate God without actually spending time with him. It doesn't happen like that. You spend the time with him first, getting to know him. That may take a long time, decades. As you're getting to know him, you're imitating the bits that you do know. Sometimes you're imitating wrongly. You interpret, well, God acts this way towards me, and so I did this. And then you find out that's not what God meant when he did this. Actually, he means, but we won't know that without continually spending time with him. It isn't back here we spent time with him and love God, and now here, now I'm older so that all you people are underneath me. That's not how it works. A lifetime. Paul writes this. Paul doesn't get the benefit that John had. John was 100 years old. He's writing Revelation. He's writing the Gospel of John, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John. He's an old man. There's a benefit and a curse to that. There just is. And so with us, we want to imitate God. We've got to actually spend time with him. That's going to be our challenge for this coming week. Are you actually, every day, you look at your day as you're going about it, at the end of your day, look back and say, have I spent any time with God? Because if I haven't, I cannot imitate God. I can't do it. If I'm not spending time with him, I cannot imitate him. I can't go, well, 25 years ago I spent time with him, and so now I can. You're not going to do it. You may fool yourself in thinking But remember what Jesus says. Many are those who will come and say, Lord, didn't I do this in your name, that in your name? And there in the Gospels, what does Jesus say? And I will say to them, I never knew you. You don't want to be in that shape. And so that's our challenge for this coming week. Every single day, am I spending time with God? How did I do that? I'm not going to judge you. You're going to look at your own self. You and the Lord are going to get together. Me and the Lord are going to get together, and we're going to work this out. That's how we go about the Christian life. See you again next time.